Hello and welcome to Easy Piecy Quilts. I'm Julia Tiedemann, and today we're going to talk about how to make team football quilt. This quilt is so much fun. It is really cool to be able to customize your favorite teams and your favorite players and make this quilt truly a personalized gift or something that you can enjoy in your home. This quilt finishes at 72 inches by 72 inches, so it is a nice throw size quilt. It allows for different colors of teams, different college fabrics, different NFL fabrics that you can use to make the helmets and identify which team you're rooting for. You can also use more solids on the front of the quilt and use the backing fabric to showcase your favorite NFL or college team. This quilt is also really cool because you can use it to identify your favorite players, whether you have a favorite NFL player or you have a son that plays football or a grandson that plays football. You can take their number and showcase it on the helmets, and these numbers do come as templates as part of the pattern. The other thing about this quilt is that all of the blocks are 12 inches. So if you would like to make more footballs on the quilt, or you want to make less helmets and whatever you want to do in combination with these blocks, they can all be interchanged and you can make the quilt more customized that way as well. So this is a really fun quilt. It actually comes together pretty quickly, and let's get started and I'll show you how to make team football. We will start with the helmet block. We're using Team Football quilt pattern by Easy Piecy Quilts. The pattern number is 122. You can get this pattern in the link in the description box below, or go to easypiecyquilts.com. The pattern includes the templates for the curved piecing, the A and B pieces. The A pieces will be cut from background fabric and the B pieces will be cut from your choice of color or football fabric. Because this is curved piecing, it's difficult to use pins, so I like to go ahead and cut out my piecing with the templates, and then I use Roxanne's Glue Baste It. This is very helpful for putting very small amounts of glue on your piecing, and it will hold it just where you want it while you are sewing these curved pieces together without having to use any kind of pins or sewing over those. We are going to be cutting out the B piece of our curved piecing with the B template. This is going to cut out the color or the NFL or team fabric that you are using for this quilt. Now be careful when you are cutting this with directional fabric. You're going to want to make sure that your pieces, when they are completed and sewn into the block, are not upside down. So that may take some planning. It's not necessarily hard, but you just need to be mindful of that. And I just use my rotary cutter to go around the outside of the template. I'm using a rotating cutting mat that makes it just a little bit easier to get around all the sides. You'll see that in the center of this template, on the side that we're going to connect to the A piece, there is a line, and that marks the center point of this piece. I'm going to use my heat erase pen to go ahead and mark that on the fabric, because we're going to use that line to line up our A piece and B piece centers. Here is our A piece template, and I have this paired with our background fabric, and I'm just going to use my rotary cutter the same way and go around the outside of the A template and cut that just slight curve, and we'll trim the ends or the edges And we're going to do the same thing with the middle line on this piece. We're going to mark it with a heat erase pen, and that way we can line up our A and B pieces, and I will show you how to do this curved piecing. It is very simple. All right, we're lining up those marks we made on that center, and we will put the A and B pieces right sides together using that mark and line that up. And you can pin this, but I have found that basting glue really is helpful, and I like Roxanne's basting glue because it has such a fine point. You can get a very small amount of glue exactly where you want it, and it will hold these two pieces together perfectly while we sew them together. And that way we're not sewing over pins, which I have done, but it is really not good on your machine. So we're just gonna also line up the ends of each one of these pieces and glue those together. I'm also going to put a little dab in between the ends and the center, just so everything stays right where I want it to, and it doesn't shift, and that will make piecing this really easy. So I'm lining up the two edges of the pieces exactly, so when the glue holds, everything will be exactly lined up. Try not to pull along that edge because it is a bias edge and it can stretch. So be very careful that you are not pulling or tugging, you're just coaxing. Okay, so I have my lead fabric in of my lead piece, which I typically use with this kind of piecing, and I'm going to come to the end of that, and then I'm just going to line up the edge that I'm sewing with the edge of my presser foot, or however your quarter inch sewing foot works, and we are just going to sew this together. Just keep it right there on the edge, and see how we don't have to mess with pins. We're not sewing over anything other than that glue, which will wash right out. And that's as hard as sewing that curved piecing is. Easy. So we have sewn our A pieces and our B pieces together, and they are forming the curved pieces of the helmet. You want to press, 9 times out of 10, I press my seams open. But since we use the glue to make it easier to stitch along this without having to use pins, which you could use pins, the edges of the fabric are stuck together. So rather than having to wet that and loosen the glue and all that, it's just easier to me to go ahead and just kind of, before you press it, just with your hand press it very gently, finger press that curve, and then press it flat. And yes, we are pressing towards the light side, and we're not going to tell anybody about that. So anyway, this is the components of the helmet block. So let's get this put together. Okay, we've got our helmet block done. Now we are going to put some numbers on it. These are, like I said earlier, customizable. Whatever number you want to put on there is available. These numbers are mirror images, and I will show you why here in just a minute. But for putting the applique on, I love Heat and Bond. If you've known me for 5 minutes, you know I love Heat and Bond. And this is a product that makes applique so much easier. It just holds those, especially these narrow appliques that would be very wiggly trying to get them sewn down. It holds them perfectly in place. You get them right where you want them every time. And it also adds a little stability to the edges of the fabric, so you don't have as much fraying if that's not the look that you're looking for. So I really like it. So what you do is you take a sheet that matches the size of the fabric that you're going to use to cut out your applique, and you find the back side of the fabric or the wrong side of the fabric, and you use the manufacturer's instructions to press this onto the back of the fabric, and I'll be right back after I do that. Okay, so I have the Heat and Bond adhered to the back of, or the wrong side of the fabric, and I just randomly came up with the number 10, and I will show you why the numbers are mirror imaged. I also wanted to point out you need a sharp pair of small scissors for this project. I really had no trouble cutting out these numbers and the fabrics with these nice sharp pair of scissors. I used them on paper. I did. But it's okay because these are very inexpensive, and I think it's always good to have extra scissors all over the place just for little threads and things like that. So I don't ever feel bad about just using my scissors, especially if they're good and inexpensive, and then they just get repurposed to other areas or used as decoy scissors, which I thought was a really funny post I read recently. Here are our numbers. We're just going to trace around them. Okay, so here is our tracing, and then you can just cut that out of your fabric there. Okay, I'm going to cut these numbers out, and I'll show you what we do with them after that. So I have the numbers cut out, and I'll show you the reason that we have mirror images. The back of this Heat and Bond peels off, and it reveals a glue that is now adhered to the fabric. So it doesn't matter for our 0 because, you know, that goes either way. But for the 1, see how we cut it out and it looks backwards. But when we have the glue side this way, and that's how we cut it out and traced it, now that we are going to press it down, it's the correct way. So you'll use the manufacturer's instructions to press this on with a warm iron wherever you want it. You know, you could have it down here or whatever you want to do, however your team does their helmets. So now you can see after this is pressed that it is not going anywhere. It is on there. It will stay exactly where you want it, how you want it. And I'm just going to blanket stitch around this. I think that holds the edges nicely and it looks pretty. And that will finish up our football helmet block. The only part of the football block that is a little different is the ends of the football. We are going to use the heat erase pen. I use these on almost every single project I do. And we're going to draw a line on the white background piece from corner to corner. You can eyeball it if you're good at that and used to sewing corner to corner, but I draw a line unless, I mean, especially if it's a little bit bigger. If it's small ones, I don't do it as often. But the way you draw from corner to corner makes a difference. So make sure you're looking at the pattern and orienting the lines appropriately. All right, I will show you this sewn. Our seams are in, sewn corner to corner. I trimmed them to 1/4 of an inch and I pressed the seam open. So all we did was flip that back and press the seam open, and let's get the rest of this block completed. Here is a look at the goalpost block. This one is so self-explanatory and simple straight piecing that I didn't really go into that, but it has very detailed instructions in the pattern on how to make this block. And it goes here in the quilt top. Let's do one last look of the football. And we have the helmet block, and the helmet block, I went ahead and stitched around the numbers. That just gives it a little bit nicer look, and it also adheres that applique permanently to the background square. There is sashing between the blocks, both vertical and horizontal sashing. The pattern goes into that very specifically on how to do all that. But once we know how to get each of the blocks done, it's just a matter of plugging them in and finishing the quilt top. So thank you so much for joining me for Team Football, and I am having a lot of fun making these videos. If you want to give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, I would really appreciate it.